So, in the last 24 hours, on three separate occasions, the idea of motivation got brought up to me. Either looking for it, needing it, not feeling it, so on and so on. Something we've all experienced, right, at different times, trying to find motivation or get motivated to get something done. So, in a later series, I'll go into whether or not motivation is the best source of providing energy, we'll say, towards accomplishing a goal. In this case, getting healthier, getting fit, working out, right? Trying to get towards that. But just to answer the question and really talk about motivation on its own. So, motivation has pros and cons. So, the big pro, and something everybody's probably felt or experienced, is that it's very, very powerful, right? So, you see something that motivates you, you hear something that motivates you, or somebody's doing something that inspires you to take action, right? So, it's a very, very powerful force. The downside is that it's short term, right? So motivation is awesome. It's one of the most powerful things that can get you to take an action, but it's probably only going to last, that day, that hour, that next couple hours. So the idea is if you want to get motivated or you want to rely on motivation, you have to be consistently producing it, right? So it's a finite resource that you constantly have to replenish, and that's fine. I like the idea of using motivation as kind of a springboard to get things started, and then you start adding in discipline, routine, organization, those kind of things, habits that will have more long-term benefits that are going to sustain you. But in the beginning, as probably anybody would tell you, you do sort of need to be motivated, right? And that's an emotional response that you have. So and I'm going to put this in the health and wellness frame, right? Because that's what we're talking about. So you can be obviously motivated to do all kinds of things, but let's say that you are motivated to lose weight, probably the most common thing that comes across in my industry. So what I might suggest is you try to have something on a timer, on repeat, on the daily, that gets that spark. So if you come across something, social media obviously is one way to do it. If there's a news story, if there's some kind of article, if there's a figure. So one of the biggest things you've probably seen in your life, if you're into sports at all, is a lot of players of a sport will say, hey man, I had a poster of you on my wall, right? So Kobe Bryant, right, probably had a poster of Michael Jordan on his wall. I'm making up an example, but you get the idea. So that way, every night he went to bed, that's what he saw, right? And he's looking at the poster, and he's like, man, that's what I want to be. That's what I'm going to do. And when he wakes up in the morning, first thing he sees, that poster, right? So that motivation replenishes itself. So it's constant. So every time you go to bed, you see it. Every time you wake up, you see it. And you can't get away from it, right? So that motivation is more consistent, whereas a lot of motivation is very fleeting. So you need a way to program that in and constantly have access to it. So it might be an account on Instagram or on TikTok that inspires you or motivates you, or is a figure that, their voice, hey, maybe it's my voice. I doubt it, but somebody's voice that just kind of triggers you to take an action or get moving or get doing something. Maybe it's some sort of physique that you'd like to obtain. It can be I'm not going to say unrealistic, but a really, really high standard. So if you wanted to say, Ryan Reynolds physique from Deadpool, like that, that's the dream. That's what I want to look like. Well, then maybe you have an image of that. Might sound a little corny on the background of your phone, right? Then every time you go to do something, hey, there's motivation right there. That's my goal. That's what I want to look like. Maybe it's a word that says fitness, health, walk, run, something small, right? Something simple but direct that you put on your background, or your alarm. You name your alarm something like that. That way, every time it goes off, every time you see it, you're constantly reinforcing the thing that you want to do. So if it's losing weight, lose, maybe it's on there. Weight, maybe it's your goal weight. We can debate whether or not that's a good idea, but something that you're going to see every day that's going to provide that sort of instinctual push to get motivated, right? For the word we're using. Another part of motivation that can help you is defining either your end goal or the specific action you want to be motivated to take, right? So let's say in this instance, it's working out. You're not working out currently. You're trying to exercise more, or at least, in your head, you're wanting to go towards exercise. So let's motivate you towards that specific goal. Don't worry about motivation in a general sense. I would tend to say don't motivate yourself towards the end goal on most occasions, because it's just, depending on where you're coming from, it's so far away that it's going to be hard to sustain that because it's going to be hard to see the progress towards that big goal. So if you have a smaller goal or smaller chunk that you're trying to get to, that motivation, I think, will sustain you a little bit more because it's a little more feasible to get to, and you're going to track progress towards that much faster. For example, say I wanted to be a bodybuilder on stage and I needed to build 15 pounds of muscle, right? I can definitely do that. That's going to take me a year, 18 months, maybe 2 months if I'm trying to stay lean while I do it. So if I have a motivation to do that, that's fine, but that's a really long-term goal. And that motivation, which is an emotional response, it's a little more short-lived, is probably not going to be strong enough to sustain me for that long-term. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's say you want to lose 20 pounds, just for easy example. Let's say you want to lose 5, right? So let's focus on that 5 pounds first. So we need motivation to get you to take action, to do something, to lose 5 pounds. So for simplicity's sake, it's 10,000 steps a day, right? If you're going from 0 to 3,000 right now, that's going to be a significant amount of improvement towards what you're doing. So, 3 times your current activity, if you want to look at it that way. So what's going to motivate you to lose 5 pounds? It's moving. So you need stuff in your life, in your day-to-day existence that's going to get you to move, right? So in this case, walking. So it can be a reminder, right? There's a bunch of apps and stuff that'll remind you to take steps. If you've got, some kind of like fitness smartwatch thing, you can set it up to send you reminders. You can look at your number and kind of see how much progress you've made. I would set alarms. If you know your schedule, if you kind of have a normal routine, then you can say, hey, first thing I wake up, I want to knock out 1,000 steps. So your first alarm is at 6 a.m., 1,000 steps. That's the name of your alarm. And you have to go do that, right? So that'll help kind of urge, if motivation is not the right word, but it's going to urge you to go do that. And you have those little triggers in there that keep you motivated. And then you have maybe a new pair of running shoes that you want to get. And you have a picture of that. And you have, once I've done 10,000 steps for 20 days and I've kind of proven that I can do that, then I'll get those shoes. So you got a little motivation. You really like those shoes. You want to go get them. So ultimately, from my perspective, it comes down to stacking as many things as you can throughout your day that are going to motivate, urge, inspire you to take some sort of action. So in our example of walking, right, just having that alarm in the morning, having an alarm in the afternoon, having an alarm in the evening, having an account that shows you somebody walking or somebody losing weight or somebody on the same journey that you're going through, having something in your house as soon as you get home, your shoes are right there or your jacket's right there or some kind of sticky note, right, that says, hey, go walk today, or, it's time to walk. So trying to stack as many of those things in your day as you can to remind you that you want to do it. So again, it's an emotional response, right? So motivation is not going to be consistent. It's not always going to be there. So if you want to use that as your fuel source, you've got to have constant hits of that motivation. So think of as many possible things that you can that are going to trigger that emotional response. So just as an example, because people like to hear personal stories, when I was young, and I, like most weightlifters, you kind of get into it through the bodybuilding world when you're a young man. And I had the Arnold book, Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. So that was something that was in my backpack every day when I was going to school. That was something I always carried with me. And then at home, I had all these bodybuilding magazines, but I had the classic picture of Arnold, with his arms spread out that said "Conquer." That was my background on my laptop. That was the background on my phone. That was a poster in my room, right? So everywhere I went, that was there. That was front of mind. I was always thinking about it. It's like, that's the aspiration. That's the goal. That's the motivation. So I never could look away from it, right? It was always around me. So again, that fuel source, you've got to pepper it in throughout every part of your day. So hopefully that's helpful. That's just a starting point on motivation. There's a lot of conversations that we can go on. But as far as the action item to go based off this video is find something that motivates you, find multiple things that might spur you towards an action, and try to pepper as many of those throughout your day in as many aspects as you can. Phone, alarm, screens, notes, friends, accounts, follows. Maybe if you take a water bottle to work, you have stuff on your water bottle that tells you to do it. Like literally think of anywhere you can put it to remind you. And it might sound a little incessant or a little bit too much, but you might find that if you have those constant triggers, it's going to be really hard to ignore that part of your brain that's seeing that and telling you, hey, you need to do that. Hey, you need to do that. Hey, you need to do that. Hey, you need to do that, right? Because it's everywhere you look. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks for watching.